I'm not saying you should blindly look at an opportunity and think abundance around every opportunity. I would not go into the newspaper industry right now with abundance. Okay. I would not go into, we can give the 8-track tape making market with abundance right now because it's a dead market.
You could go into vinyls or cassettes though.
Yeah, because it's coming back, right? So people do have to recognize this is not blind positivity. This is not blind abundance, right? This is that the world is abundant and you have the choice to go follow the path of where the abundance is growing, and you have the choice to move away from where things are actually shrinking.
Hey friends, welcome back to another podcast episode of the Carrot Cast, where we help agents and investors like yourself build businesses of freedom and impact by dialing in your online marketing. I'm your co-host today. I've got Trevor on here.
Yeah, dude. I'm like we were saying before we hit record, I'm pumped to be in an in-person podcast with you again. It's been a bit. I'm proud of you the way you've been running the podcast. I honestly think about it as Brady's podcast now, as much or more than mine. So I'm pumped to be on your podcast today, dude.
I'm honored to carry the torch. Thank you, man. It's funny. Yeah, this is super nostalgic for me. It's funny this time of year. I think we were first in this room like probably about it's been just over 5 years ago, recording a podcast with Jen, which has turned out to be one of the most popular podcasts, talking about hiring an assistant. But yeah, 5 years ago, I started doing podcasts in this room. So it's fun, man. But we're doing something a little bit different than marketing today. So we're talking about overcoming scarcity mindset. And Trevor, before we hit record, I was telling you I wanted to do this episode because selfishly I wanted to pick your brain on I'm overcoming or had a pretty scarcity mindset, leaning towards pessimistic. I always joke that I'm like the recovering pessimist. But I was like, I hear like all this talk about abundance versus scarcity, and from the world I came from, you don't I'd never heard about that term very much until I started listening to some entrepreneurs, and these terms only exist in certain like self-development, personal development spaces. And so it was really new to me. And at first I'm just kind of like the first few years, I'm just kind of rolling my eyes like, what is this abundance mindset? It just sounds so fluffy if there's no text around it. And then I start to see like real life examples crop up in my life where I'm like, oh, I really am looking at this like inaccurately. Um, it's not fluffy or wooey. Like I really am not seeing the potential in certain scenarios. I know it's ambiguous, but like not seeing my own growth or like a company's growth, just kind of having limiting beliefs. So anyways, that's kind of what I want to dive into today. And it's funny because for anybody listening, if you listen to the Truck Talks, Trevor you just put out that episode on money mindset issues. So basically we're going to dive deeper into that today. And so where I kind of want to start, man, is I feel like I don't have we're jumping in this conversation. I think I know my definition of scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. Um, how would you describe scarcity mindset when it comes to like what's attainable for you, and how do you look at scarcity mindset like when you first heard about that term versus
Yeah, dude, the thing that pops up for me is like scarcity is something of limited supply. It's something that's hard to get. It's something that you don't believe you can get it. It's exclusive to only a select few or something like that. I think scarcity really is it brings a lot from the past. It brings a lot of influence from the past. Abundance brings a lot of influence from the future. Yeah, and even when you're going through challenging times, right? Like there's some things that we're working through growth wise at Carrot, and there's some other things too there. Where oftentimes when things aren't working the way that we want them to work in our lives or businesses, we get sucked into the moment, and then we look back at the last 6 to 12 months or 18 months or 24, whatever it is, and find all the reasons why things haven't worked. We look backwards and come up with all these reasons why things haven't worked, why that's going to continue being true in the future. Instead of we pull back and we use the past as context, but we use the future as the content or the fuel, right? So that's a little bit of it, but and we can dive crazy deep here. I think at the end of the day, people who fall into a scarcity mindset are like feel enclosed. When you have an abundance mindset, it feels like the whole world is not.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't thought about putting it in terms of like looking at the past versus the future. Past is like how have we done it, or what resources, even present, like what do we have right now versus what do we need for the future. I was recording a podcast a couple days ago with Jack Bosch's wife and his daughter.
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle and Sophia, awesome people. Um, and it was really cool to hear Michelle's 16-year-old daughter say, oh, what was it? Something to the effect of, instead of them raising their kids to think, "I can't afford this," it's,
Mm,
"How can I
yep,
afford this?" It's a
yep.
completely different mindset, and I think that's kinda what we're talking about with scarcity.
Dude, on that topic, yeah, with our kids, right? We hardwire these things into our children or into our team or the people around us, right? The people that are most around us, the way that we speak to each other or the way that someone speaks to us is that influence that makes us scarce or abundant. And with my kids, one of the things that we talk about all the time is like, you can't say I can't, right? Like we don't say that. We say I can't at our house. And Sydney will say, Dad, I can't do this homework, whatever. Or I've tried this thing and it won't work. And I go, well, no, it's not that it won't work. It's not that you can't do it.
I go, "Ah!"
Yeah, exactly.
Hard stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that you just haven't figured out how to make it work yet. Right. And so even those little things as parents, y'all, we need to really pay attention to that. What are we training our kids? How are we speaking into our kids, whether it's tone or whether it's future based or past based, or whether we're even, with our kids' homework, saying things to them that make them think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Right, there was a time we were, my wife and I were doing homework, and you know Carly well. Like I'm more of the future thinking abundance guy, and Carly's more of the present, like really in the moment. And I wouldn't say she's a scarcity mindset, but she's a little bit more on the pessimistic side. And so we're helping McKinley with homework, and something was getting really hard. And I don't remember what the comment was, but it was a comment where I'm like, oh my gosh, you're reinforcing the fact that she thinks this thing's hard. It is hard, but how do we say it in a different way to where it reinforces the fact that she's insanely smart and just hasn't figured it out yet? And we need to figure out the method of doing this math problem that works for her brain. That's hard though in that moment to think, what story am I telling my kids and how am I hardwiring into it?
Yeah, which maybe some of y'all can relate to my thoughts on this, but, like, when I would hear things like that, I would think, like, "That sounds delusional," or, "We're ignoring reality," and you and I have had conversations on this, and it's like, "No, it's not that we're ignoring the fact that it's hard. We're not lying to ourselves, it's just framing it in a different perspective, saying, 'Okay, I have what it takes to overcome this, or I have what it takes to achieve XYZ.'" What was the first light bulb moment for you, like, going from scarcity to abundance mindset? Whether that was something you learned or heard somebody talk about it, or maybe it was, like, first lump sum of money you made where, like, "Holy crap, this is possible."
I'll think through a few examples that pop up. I mean, I remember way young. So when my dad he lost two jobs. He was in the equipment rental space, and one of them he got fired, and the other one the business went out of business within a year of him getting there. And so he lost two jobs, and he went on to create a business out of necessity. And so in that moment of just kind of seeing someone be able to go create something of nothing, where he was down and out. He was in a really hard position. My wife created a company out of need, or my mom created a company out of need as well. And so I think that was the first thing, just seeing someone around me create something out of nothing, something that didn't exist one moment, and then a year later it did, and it was making the family some money. It was at least food on the table. Now it was years before, like maybe a decade before it actually was supporting the family really, really well. And that business is going for 30, 35 years now. But it was that moment, and I remember another one. I don't remember how young I was, but um, my dad and I were in the house, and he was saying, "Hey, Trev, like, because we should go buy." I'll do this to my kids now, like, just say something that kind of sounds crazy, but he's like, "We should go buy a house. I saw on TV like you can buy these foreclosure houses for $200." And this is probably in the early '90s or late '80s. And as a kid, you don't know any better because $200 is the same as $1,000,000 when you're 7 or 8,
Yeah.
right? So I remember him saying that, and then I remember taking that into college and those types of things, and I think just the speaking into someone the a possibility that most people think isn't possible. So what I ended up doing was in college then, I bought my first property for none of my own money. It was less than $200. It was a 4-unit building, I still own it today. I had no business as a 21-year-old. buying apartment building on owner finance that cash flowed from day one. I only did it because I knew it was possible from hearing it earlier on. I think kind of more practical for people. Like, let's say you're in your adulthood now, and maybe you didn't have the advantage that I'll fully admit that I had of a father and a mother who kind of blasted through some of those barriers. Because a lot of people don't have that advantage, and they're trying to rewire their mental wiring, right? So let's say you're an adult now and you're not living in that environment anymore. So you get to rewire yourself. You get to reinvent things. Well, out of college, I flunked the LSAT 2 times. I couldn't get into any law school, after college. That's what I wanted to do, be a lawyer and a real estate investor. And so I go up to Portland to try to be a real estate investor. Discovered that's not what I wanted to do in the daily, but then I liked marketing. So I started to try to pitch these marketing services. And over again, I would hit rejection after rejection. So I was getting wired that things were scarce everywhere, right? Like rejection, rejection, rejection. My whole life, I've been fortunate to have a lot of wins.
So before you discovered evergreen marketing
Yeah,
and
it's before all
value.
that stuff. And so then I had this series of losses, right? Which looking back, they were losses that needed to be there. I'm so grateful for those losses. And I don't want to put my losses up against someone else's challenges because I will admit I've had it far easier than many people out there, right? But I had the loss of flunking the LSAT, not being able to chase what I thought was my dream at that time. Then I had loss after loss of just not being able to make real estate work in that first year on the active side, wholesaling. Then I had like probably pitched 15 to 20 people marketing services, and all of them said no if they even answered back at all. Like I was lucky to even get answers. And then finally, Brady, what shifted for me was I started to dive into personal development. I started to dive in and listen to people who spoke bigger, who talked bigger, who dreamed bigger, and talked about value. And they said value is unlimited. Like there's no scarcity around value. And the cool thing is technology and other things accelerate the value we can add for people. And so they said if you're having a challenge getting money, you need to add more value. And how can you use technology to accelerate it? And how can you offer a value that jumps out and is different and compelling than other people? And so that's when I just took and I said, well, I'm just going to offer these services for free now. So I'm already not making any. I started stacking up wins. People replied to my email. I started getting people to let me do work for them for free. And then people said, I want to pay you for it. So it flipped because before I couldn't get someone to pay me, so the world was scarce. Now all of a sudden they were coming to me saying, can I pay you something for this work? I wasn't even asking them. And after enough of that, I'm going, wow, people actually have money that are looking to funnel it to somebody else. I just had the value equation wrong. So that's when it really hit for me. Because you can adjust it, you can flip it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like myself, and I think a lot of people included think in terms of like, what service or what industry or what specific problem can I solve and how much value or excuse me, how much money is that problem or this task or this job worth instead of in terms of value. And that's powerful because you can do the same job, you can do the same task, and you can almost do it the same way, but do it in a way that provides so much more value and be compensated for providing more value.
Some people will say like they'll have the scarcity mindset because there's a lot of competition, right, in a market, or or they'll go, oh my gosh, there's like 8 billion writers out there, whatever the thing is that they're looking to do. So what is there 8 billion humans I think on Earth, right? And I think one approach from this is you can go, oh my gosh, look at all these resources that are limited, that are more scarce because there's more people. So that's one approach. More people equals more scarcity because there's fewer things to go around with those people, right? But I look at it the other way. I go, yes, there are 8 billion people, and some resources are going to be more scarce, right? Water, food in some areas, housing in some areas, things like that. If there are a lot of competitors for an investor or an agent in one market, yeah, there are fewer deals to go between all those people, right? But then I pull back and go, well, with more people, what if that was actually a better thing? Like, what if that's actually gives more abundance with there being 8 billion people in this world versus 4 billion people? Because now there's 8 billion people, there's 4 extra billion people I can go solve a problem for that might turn into revenue or might turn into income for me. 4 extra billion people I get to go out there and solve problems for, right? Or let's say I'm in this market and there's a lot of competition and fewer deals. I go, well, let me just switch it up. Either I need to offer and position myself better, right? So I rise above and I'm taking it from the abundance mindset. It's it's yes, there is a finite pie here, but I'm going to position more to get more of the pie. Someone has to get more of the pie. Might as well be me, right? Someone has to get the majority of that pie. I want to be the person and I can do it. If that person can do it, I can do it. But the next thing is I go, well, is there something they're not seeing? Because there's so many people focusing on this, it must be a good opportunity. Is there something I can sell all those people that are focusing on this that actually might replace the income of trying to go and work with that seller as an example? So maybe I can company and work with all of these people out here that are doing all this work that I think are competitors for me, or I can start a title company, or I can start a mortgage company. I can go partner with all those 4,000 agents in the market. We just need to look at it differently. I think people hone their focus so tightly and they get married to this solution. They get married to this solution of I'm an investor and I'm an agent, I do this thing, therefore all these other people do the same thing. That's competition. Get married to problems. What problems are there? And what are the biggest problems, the biggest opportunities? Chase the ones that have abundance and opportunity and leave the ones that are more scarce by nature.
I think for me at least, that's really helpful, powerful context because I think when we talk about like scarcity over abundance mindset, it's easy for me to make the assumption like, oh, Trevor, if we're talking about abundance, we're saying that there's an abundance of like motivated house sellers. There's which in some cases there are, in some cases that is the issue. Like there's more sellers than you realize. Um, but it's like, well, there's not unlimited house sellers. So it's not just have an abundance mindset in the sense of there's unlimited customers. You just need to go after them. But it's really a conversation of like, how can I get more creative, to look for those other problems like you're talking about, like starting a title company or a mortgage brokerage. Yeah, it's interesting. You recorded that truck talk on money mindset issues and let's talk about that a little bit. I thought it was funny when you sent it to me. I was like, wait, why is Trevor Mock sending me a podcast on money mindset issues? In the first 10 minutes, I'm just like skeptical as all get out. I'm like, why? How's this guy have any money mindset issue? One of the best people I know when it comes to managing and acquiring money. How does this happen? And so it was a really good podcast. If anyone hasn't listened to it, go listen to that. Put this one on pause, go listen to it, and then come back. But for me, man, there was this big light bulb. So it actually solved like half of my scarcity mindset issue. And so I was almost like, man, do we even still do this podcast about how to overcome scarcity mindset?
Okay, go deeper.
So here's what it was is for me personally, I felt like if I'm making money, whether that's through a job, a side hustle, or whatever, that if I'm making money, then I'm taking away opportunity from people, or there's a finite number of opportunities or income, and that if I'm making more money, then how is that going to make other people of my age or my status or whatever? How's that going to make them feel? Is it going to cause jealousy, or is it taking away opportunities for them? Like, if there's a photographer in Roseburg and they're doing more business, does that mean they're taking away business from the next photographer, for example? Um, so I used to think about it like that. Like if you were to draw this out, if I'm going up, then it's like scales or like a teeter totter, like
Yeah.
other people are going down in their income, or I'm taking away opportunity. After listening to that podcast, I thought, and sorry, I'll pause and say, I also viewed that as like there's a limit. Like, oh, with my skills and my abilities and my market, whatever, there's a limit. I can only do this much, acquire this much, have this success. Speaking really ambiguously, but um, the light bulb that went off for me is that you're talking about adding value to others and how um, basically having that abundance mindset can help you elevate others. And instead of viewing it in my head as this teeter totter, these scales, it's I can elevate and I can actually use that, whether it's money, skills, time, whatever, pour into other people to help them do the same.
Yeah.
And create new opportunities for people. And it's funny because I was, talking with again Michelle and Sophia this week,
Yeah.
and they were saying the same thing. I was like, "What keeps you going?" And they were talking about how their motivation isn't like, it doesn't work when your motivation is to keep acquiring for yourself. That only gets you so far. And so our thing is, I'm paraphrasing, but our thing is to help other people do the same and pour into others. And so anyways, listening to that podcast, it was just this huge light bulb moment of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not doing this for myself. I didn't do that, but 2, I'm not taking away opportunity from others. If I am limiting myself and if I have that mindset, it's almost poisoning me because it's preventing me from being able to help
Yeah,
other
you
people."
can't serve other people very well.
Right. Exactly. Whether that's with time or money or both. And so, yeah, that was a huge light bulb for me.
Dude, that topic's so big, right? Because like That is a very common mindset. I think people have that it's a zero sum game. And we'll hear it all the time from one group of people that say entrepreneurs and employers or rich people, they only got there by extracting from other people, right? They got there from pushing other people down in some way. Now, are there some people that did that? Heck yeah, there's some people that did that. Um, but the people that I know who got wealthy didn't do it that way, right? They did it because they added more value than someone else. And in that case, and you talk about Michelle and Sophia and what we're doing here and what so many of our other friends, people that we know, we're going out there and teaching our knowledge that it took us a long time to acquire this knowledge, right? If we thought it was a zero sum game, that if we won, others lost, and if others won, we lost, we would not have this podcast and teach other people everything we know about how to do this stuff, right? We wouldn't do that because we'd be like, every second I'm out here doing this is actually removing my own opportunity because someone else is going to be winning. It's not that at all. When you look at the wealth that, and we're talking financial wealth here, right? If you look at the wealth that was in the world and you track it back for 2,000 years, right? And you really value like the actual wealth that had been accumulated during those times. There's more wealth in today's world by, I don't know the number, but by a lot than there ever has been in this world. Okay. Also, there's more people. So how is it that we have far more people to divvy up the, yet we have more wealth than any other period ever during the history of this world? Okay, it's because as things grew, opportunities became true that weren't true 10 years ago or 20 years ago. New technologies came that made it so we could mine into the earth, extract things that we couldn't extract before. We built a new technology called computers that all of a sudden now made all these new opportunities that didn't exist 100 years ago. And you start to look at all these opportunities that became true by people creating things that added value that created a whole new track of industry that created more wealth and more opportunity for the more people. And so when people look at this and go, what happens if there's 12 billion or 16 billion people on there? I don't know. I'm not, yeah, I don't know structurally how many people this earth can hold, water and all that stuff. But you know what I do know is we'll have some challenges, but I also know that there's a lot of smart people that are going to continue to be born. They're going to solve those problems. They're going to continue to create even more wealth. And, it's probably going to branch to the moon and Mars and wherever it's going to go. And so that's the way I look at it is as we help others rise, we'll rise and vice versa. Um, and really, dude, like the thing that's most exciting for me about abundance versus scarcity is I'm big on energy. There's periods of my life, even this year, where I've just been in massive energy drains during the week. I'm like, oh, that sucks. When you get into that mode, dude, do you feel abundant or do you feel scarce? 100% scarcity because you're in this bubble. You're going from your house to your car to your office. You're in this bubble. You're not going in and meeting people. You're putting your head down, working on these things. You're looking in the past at all the things that have been challenging and hard. You're bringing it into your present, and you're bringing all those limiting beliefs forward with you to give you a million reasons why this thing can't be true. And so either you or someone has to come and show you the path forward in the future. And the only way you can do it yourself is to get out of that bubble. You've got to pull out. You've got to go do things that give you energy. You've got to go work out again. You've got to go get around people that are abundant thinkers. You have to, and then you have to come in back into that work with a new set of eyes and go, you know what? I've seen a new future for how we can solve all this stuff. Yeah. Everything that has happened this past 6 months or a year or 2 years, it's hard. We made a bunch of mistakes. We did this, we did that. Um, Market's contracting, da 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 da. But then we go, okay, that's true. But now, where are the abundant pockets that we can step into and add value to? And this is something I want people to recognize. I'm not saying you should blindly look at an opportunity and think abundance around every opportunity, right? I would not go into the newspaper industry right now with abundance. Okay, I would not go into we can the 8-track tape making market with abundance right now because it's a dead market,
You
right?
could go into vinyls or cassettes, though.
Yeah, because it's coming back, right? So people do have to recognize this is not blind positivity. This is not blind abundance, right? This is that the world is abundant and you have the choice to go follow the path of where the abundance is growing. And you have the choice to move away from where things are actually.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. It's funny as you're talking, like, get into like energy draining moods or situations, whatever. Um, I think about for myself, it's like how much your stress can affect your mindset when it
Yeah.
comes to like abundance
Yeah.
versus scarcity.
Mm.
It's like your brain is hardwired to when you get stressed out to go into defense mode. And it's really interesting. Like just like on the podcast, you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Yeah.
and just how much when you are stressed out, when you don't have some of those needs met, when you're just grinding, how your brain can slowly, without you even realizing it, just go into this mindset of just everything is scarce. I'm really on the
Yeah.
defense and I'm just trying to play defense. And you forget kind of what's possible. So it takes like what you said, like getting out, just like interrupting your routine, your habits, your people.
Read something here.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
pulling up my life truths list here, and
Yeah.
I have a whole section written on abundance versus scarcity, and I'll read a couple things to you here. So, abundance versus scarcity and the impact on energy. The two mind models in life are abundance, which creates energy, and scarcity, which kills energy. Scarcity starts with envy. It grows to guilt, isolation, depletion, erosion, etc. Abundance starts with gratitude, creativity, cooperation, opportunity, ingenuity, and it's exponential. And the cool thing is, like, when I hear people putting down an idea I've got or a goal, I remember this last week. It wasn't even a big goal. I was talking with the team, and I'm like, no, I think we can hit 80% with this. And then the team member came back with a scarce mindset, which nothing against that, right? Like, this is just an opportunity to go. Let me add some abundance thinking to this. Am I 100% sure we're gonna hit that? No, I'm not. Is it possible? 100% possible. But if we pull back and say 40 or 50% because of how hard it's been in the past, how are we ever going to get anywhere new?
Exactly.
We
It's that
all,
mindset of like, well, I'm looking at it with what have we done to hit that
yeah.
goal?
And it goes back to some of these words that pop up on here, right? Um, uh, guilt. Hey, I didn't hit these 5 goals in the past. I kind of feel guilty. I'm going to pull my goals back a little bit so I hit them so I don't have that guilt. Isolation, can happen with scarcity, depletion, erosion. But on the abundance side, creativity, right? Cooperation, opportunity, ingenuity. And so I look at those and I go, well, those things are abundant thinking. You don't have to know how to hit that goal. You just have to know that it is possible with the right idea. We just don't have the idea yet. Let's go find it. Like, who has the idea? That's cooperation, right? Creativity is, let's think about it in a completely different way than we ever have. So what have we done to hit that goal in the past or to not hit the goal in the past? Cool. Yeah, let's recognize that that didn't work in the past. And that got us a certain result. So let's have creativity around solving. Wait, who do we need to talk right? There's probably someone who could come in here and look at that thing right now in front of us and say that 80% number is actually a shoe and we should be shooting for 95 because they have the experience for it. So that's the way I think about it. Is I go, is it possible? If it's flat out not possible, then that's a different story. But if it's possible, and then it's just a question of who's got the answer. And either we're going to come to the answer by iteration, giving, testing things, or we're going to find the person who has it. And they're going to come in and show us that new path and hopefully over time open up that abundance.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, tell me, let's so diving deeper into this money mindset issue and like scarcity versus abundance. Um, talk to me about kind of what you were touching on in the podcast about what have you realized about yourself? What was this money mindset scarcity issue you didn't even realize that you had? So I think a lot of people listening will relate to this. Like if you're
Yeah.
whether you've accumulated some wealth or you haven't, whatever that means to you, I think it'll really resonate with people yeah. Yeah. Anyways, what did you realize there?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I put in that podcast, but I think this is it because this is what I've been cranking on for the last couple months.
Yeah,
The me
around
versus
saving.
want.
I think you might have used the word hoarding.
Okay. Yep. Cool.
But just scarce in the sense of not wanting to spend the money
Mhm.
and put it to better use.
Yeah.
This fear of like I need to keep acquiring.
Mhm.
And just like let's say something real quick. I think I wouldn't have felt comfortable saying this before, but now that you've recorded this podcast
Yeah.
and talked, been transparent about like why am I so focused on acquiring more and saving, saving, saving? It's funny because like a year or two back, we were maybe in the process of buying one of the buildings next door. And I just thought it was from my perspective, I thought it was so interesting. I'm like, why is he buying the buildings. Like, what's the drive behind that? What's the motive behind wanting to invest in money? Like, what is enough? So anyways, I thought that was interesting. I didn't think it was good or bad. I just didn't quite understand it, you know? That podcast, I feel like shed some light on.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, let's dive deep on this one. So, go listen to that other episode, y'all, because I dive into it pretty deeply. But um, my older brother and I, Jeff, like we're completely opposite. We look completely different. I mean, he's got dark hair, 6 foot, full head of hair still.
I just saw him the other day. I was like, "What's your
Yeah,
brother?"
my older brother, my younger brother Kyle and I look more alike. But amazing dude, love him to death. But he was always the first one. As soon as he would get a dollar growing up, it was gone. And even the dollar I got was probably gone. Like, and I'm looking for it, and he would said he didn't take it. Right? So it would just go out fast. But he seemed like he was having a lot of fun too. I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had with what he was doing. He took his college tuition one time, and I remember we went up there to pick him up or do something. He had all this brand new snowboarding gear. And my parents like, where'd you get all this stuff? And it come to find out he used his college tuition to buy snowboarding gear, and he didn't end up making it in college. So he was there for a semester or two, but he just had fun, right? Growing up, I remember, and I didn't recognize it at the time, about there's still some of these tendencies for me as an adult too. I remember I would save, and not like delayed gratification times 10, right? For me, it's delayed gratification times 10. I'm totally okay if I do the thing and if a result doesn't happen for 10 years or maybe even ever, I don't know. But I would get the money from something, from working or birthday or whatever. And I just had everything loaded in my wallet. I had $100 or $200 in there as like a 7 or 8 year old in this wallet. Like every little possession was jammed in this wallet, and I thought it was safe and secure, and I never spent anything. Or I would wait to go out with somebody, and I knew they were going to buy this dollar thing for me or whatever. And I'm sure there were times when I spent something, but I was proud of saving with no real goal of how I was going to use that and turn it into something of value or joy. And so then I lost that wallet one day at a basketball game with my dad, and I remember we drove away, and I'm looking for my wallet, and I just started freaking out because everything I'd been saving for was gone. So we run back in the basketball court, look underneath the bleachers, it's gone. And
Nothing like losing your wallet as a kid. That
yeah,
sucks.
and had everything
Yeah.
I had. Like I've literally been saving birthday money for probably years in that wallet. So why was I carrying it? I don't know, because I wasn't gonna spend it anyway. But I was. I thought it was safer there. And so I lost it. And I think at that time it actually even compounded that to say, well, now I'm gonna really make sure I'm keeping it safe. And I continued to save throughout, and but did it in a way where it was responsible. I didn't do it as an example. My parents made a deal with us where they would pay for part of our first vehicle, and I just saved enough where they didn't pay for any of it. I've never asked for help as an adult with any money, even when we're struggling. I've never got help from a parent, um, while other siblings have. Not that they wouldn't have offered it, they would have. So it was like saving because I needed to be responsible, and I didn't want to have to ask people for help. I think that's really what it was. Like, I'm gonna go make that.
Interesting. This like almost incessant need to like I need to be able to do this on my own, the self-preservation
Yeah.
or
Yeah, so even to a fault, I think. Now that did carry into as an adult. I spend money, right? We have a nice house, we're renovating it. I have a vehicle. I don't wanna get a Lambo or anything like that, but I have a vehicle. We do spend money usually on big things, vacations, house, vehicle, stuff like that. But, pretty darn tight with everything else because I just really don't want a lot of that stuff. And so what I came to realize a few years ago was asking the question, like, why do I have this money? And that question, when is enough enough? And then you go, well, enough for what? Right? You have to ask the question, enough for what? For financial security. What does financial security mean? And how much money do you need to get that? And so start to really doing the math to really write that number down. I think Kiyosaki calls it your freedom number or something like that. Like actually writing the number down, and then not just the number, but walking it backwards into the lifestyle you want. And this we're all kind of going to the next part of it, which is needs versus wants. That really is probably the biggest thing for me in the past year. As I was always working in the early days to pay for things I needed, right? I needed to pay for the rent. I needed to not have a normal job in my mind. Like that wasn't just a want. I really needed to not have a job, normal job. I needed a truck at one time because the other truck was going bad. I needed these things. But then beyond the needs, and like we're talking the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the bottom you've got food, water. It's the basic. Without those, you die. And then up next is shelter, right? So it's a cover over your head. You can survive without shelter if you have food and water, but not going to be a very good life, right? So let's say you get that shelter locked down. It doesn't have to be nice shelter; it just has to be shelter. It just has to be four walls. Then it's basically safety. Okay, so you can have food, water, shelter, and not be safe and not feel good about your life. So you can be in the best neighborhood in the world if there's someone, a burglar that's going around all the time and making your guys' neighborhood terrible, or there's drug deals happening next door all the time. You're not safe, so you have to move. So you nail the safety now, it's belonging, and then self actualization. So once you've got all those taken care of up through safety, what happens is motivation can start to flip, right? Motivation starts to wane if you don't have a reason why you're needing to grow anymore. And at that point, for me, scarcity versus abundance is you really start to ask those questions. You go, well, why? Like, when is too much abundance too much abundance? When is it me just asking for more for me? I got all my needs taken care of, right? So I don't need to go make more money. So why should I work hard to do this stuff? And then it just leads into distraction. It leads into not getting focused on the right things. And then honestly, it leads into erosion of that security that you created over time. And so the big thing I've been wrestling over, which I talk about a good bit in that other one, is need-based motivation versus want-based. Now let's stack those up against abundance and scarcity. Okay. Need-based motivation, scarcity-based motivation is I'm doing this thing because I have to fulfill one of these basic needs that I have, and I don't have that right now, right? It's out of, I don't have this thing. I don't have this, therefore I need to get it. So that's your motivation. But as soon as you have those needs taken care of, then we should step into want-based motivation, but a lot of us don't because we feel guilty, or we can't justify it, or we are believers and we read scripture that says things about rich men not being able to, the most difficult path to heaven is, a rich man, or it's like you're trying to pass a, camel through a needle, or
Camel needle. If I tried it, I'd botch it, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
then you look at those things and you start to go, man, I've already got my needs taken care of. So, oh shoot, is this me now not being a good Christian? Is this me selfishly wanting to acquire these things? And I went through that period for probably years that really did impact the business and other things. And so where I'd started to come around to, talking to some people, is the value of want-based motivation or abundance-based motivation. And where I've came to, and I truly believe that there's biblical scripture to back it up. Now you can interpret it in many different ways, but you and I memorize James 1, right? Inside of James 1, in this context for the biblical scholars, definitely IG message me if I'm off on this, but there's one part in there where or the Bible scholars IG message me, but there's one part in there where it does say, hey, if you have a need, right? If you have a need, ask God for that wisdom or for that need. And it says, if you truly believe, it'll be given to you, right? If you have a need, if you have something that you want, ask, and it'll be given as long as you actually believe that it's going to be given. And that's a very clear part of it. That if you don't believe, then it goes on. The next verse is basically, I'm paraphrasing, that you won't get anything. If you don't believe that you will get that or can get it, then you won't get it.
That makes sense. So there's other verses to back up that point about, like, if God provides for like the flowers and the lilies of the field, then why would you think that He wouldn't care for you, provide for you? Yeah.
So the first thing is you have to believe that you can have it. Number one, which is the abundance side of it. But the next thing is, I think we have to believe that it's okay to want it, right? And I think this is where I've been kind of challenging myself with it over the past year again. Is then I go back, well, do I really need this? Is this just me being selfish? How does this help the world? That kind of thing. But then I go, you know what? I want that thing. I just do. And I don't feel like, I feel like it gives a better life for our family. I feel like it provides more fun for me, which is good. And I feel like I can actually, if I'm doing this, I'm putting myself in a better position to serve other people rather than just head down all the time and grinding away. Or how can I use the house that we're renovating? My vision for that, honestly, is like, I want to have big church events there. I want to be able to have a lot of people out there, like, enjoying the space and creating a spot for ministry right there, and like gathering people together. You go up to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and look at the belonging part. I want to create a place where people can come and belong and join and join hands together. So it's still something I'm wrestling through, but I've really been giving myself more permission to step into abundance-based motivation and just saying, if this is possible in the world, if I could, write that story, what would I want? Not just what would I need? What would I want that to look like? And how can I use that now to better others' lives? And how can I use that for God's glory? Not how can I use my own significance? That's the shift, dude. I kept looking at things as past a certain point, abundance was my significance rather
Right,
than
like there's this bar where everything up to that bar is just need okay, and anything past that is
then it was my
selfish.
significance, right? But what I really realized and shifted to, I'm like, no, that is one way to do it. That's one way some people are doing it. It's not a good way. That leads to a lack of joy in life and all that. But you really start to shift it and go, no, it's not about significance for me. It's about service. It's about service. So I want to go grow something big and amazing because I want to serve more people. And I can serve a heck of a lot more people if I have more resources. Heck of a lot more. I can buy buildings downtown and help to make downtown better and help to serve businesses down here. We had a meeting last night with the business owners here, talking about where we want to go with the building and the upgrades we're going to make to it. And they're all insanely pumped because they're like, I hope every other building owner downtown takes suit. I couldn't do that if we didn't have more resources. And I couldn't have done it if I didn't have a want. I don't need those buildings, but I want them because I want to be a part of changing.
Yeah, it's funny, man. There was, I don't know if you heard the sermon from church a couple weeks back, but um, Dave was talking about giving, and it ties right into what we're talking about because he was talking about like the motive to give. Are we expecting something else in return? And anyways, he had brought up the verse about reaping, you reap what you sow. And without getting deep into like philosophy or preaching, this type of you call it prosperity preaching, more common in the South, of where people are saying, you give so that you can get, like, give this and God will bless you, or do this and get X, and it's just this terrible, awful. It's this incorrect perspective on like giving so that you can get. It's like just a poor motivator. And anyways, he brought up the verse about reaping what you sow, and shed the correct light on it, the correct perspective. And it was the first time I'd heard it talked about like this. Anyways, he was saying, he was breaking down the verse, and it actually explains how you reap what you sow is so that you can um, sow more. And it's like basically, if you give, you will get that back. And that's where a lot of people stop. It's like, so you can get, even in like business transactions, like, oh, add value to someone and it will come back to you. And then it stops there. But I think a way more motivating, way healthier way to look at this, biblically sound, is give so that you can get that, so that you can give it again. That is cyclical in the best way possible, and that feel like you can't run out of motivation when you're looking at it that way. And so that's kinda what you're talking about. It's like not this bar of, okay, anything past making this certain amount of money or this certain amount of success is selfish. Sweet, I'm gonna keep doing this and keep doing it over and over.
I think it's actually selfish for people not to go chase a bigger ambition. And here's why I'm going to say that is you've got a skill set, dude, that could help tons of people. You are through the podcast, through other work you're doing locally. You're doing that too. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Brady shows up to my house, and you guys have probably heard. Well, I recorded one podcast about a month and a half ago about my dad's situation, and for those that didn't hear it, he was diagnosed with a really aggressive terminal brain cancer, and it's been a humbling last few months. It's been just a journey. There's been a lot of amazing things along the journey, and that's one of them, right? Where I get a text message from Brady. We literally had a need for. I'm starting to like tear up even thinking about it, but we literally had a need um, for the ramp at our guest house, and I was thinking about it the night before because my dad was in a wheelchair by that time. And I get a text message from Brady out of the blue. He's like, "Hey, you know, do you guys need any help? I built a ramp." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes! Like that's exactly what we need." And Brady shows up that day with his son Atticus to build the ramp. Because I'm tearing up, y'all. So if you're just listening to this, but that's a skill set that Brady has. He built the skill set of building things over the years, and he was able to serve that, right? It wasn't about Brady's significance. He wasn't going, man, I hope I get this big Instagram post. Trevor's going to show my ramp. right? It was, I want to show.
Maybe I'm sitting home like, dang it, why didn't Trevor put in his IG stories?
It was
Just
like,
kidding.
it was because you wanted to serve. It was, you wanted to serve. And that's it, guys. I want to challenge everyone who is in that spot where maybe you have had that mental programming over the years about money is bad or money is evil, money is the root of all evil. And that's not true. Money amplifies who you already are. And if the programming that you have is scarce programming, then it's going to stop at a certain point. Now you're going to amplify the scarcity for other people, right? And so you need to step out there, I truly feel, and add more value to the world. Money is just an exchange of value. And if you're not making a lot of money, it's because you're not exchanging enough value to other people, to enough other people. Now that conversation is hard when I have it with people because if I'm talking with someone, or it could be a team member at Carrot, right? Where they're like, man, I'm showing up every day working my butt off. That's true. You are working your butt off and you're doing insanely good at that. But I remember Dan Martell, he says this quite often. He had an employee of his on the finance side came to him recently. And that employee said, hey, I want to be able to make more money here. And he said, great. He goes, how you gonna, here's how much money you want to make. And then the person said, I'd love to make 300,000 a year. And that job that person was in was like a 70 or 80 or 90,000 a year job, right? And Dan goes, awesome. He goes, so the way that I do things here is if you can make me X amount of money or whatever it was, he goes, I'll pay people equivalent to you bringing 10x the revenue that your job costs us. And so if you want to make 300,000, go find a way for this business to make 3 million. I'll pay 300,000 all day long. And then the person slinked away and they're like, either I really don't want that, or I got to figure out how to up level my skill set. I've got to add more value, not more time. It's not about more time. It's not about harder work. It's not an edict on the person isn't working. It's what skill set or value can I add that is addition value or a greater value to my employer, or a greater value to the customer, or greater value to whoever. And so that's where I want to challenge people is think about value, and then you'll get in return the portion of value. A couple other things, Bree, that pop in my mind before I forget them. One of the things that I think is really important on the abundance versus scare. I just forgot it. One of the I'll keep talking and it'll pop up. So on the abundance versus scarcity side of things.
Here, let me.
I'll toss it back over to you. It was good.
It's okay. It'll come back to you. It'll come back. You know what? One thing I've noticed about myself lately, this is really interesting. If anybody else has ADHD and can relate to this, like you lose your thought. And the trick I'm realizing is the second you stop trying, the second you give up, there's like a few seconds afterwards. That's when it comes to you. And so
got it.
I got
it back. Got it back. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I agree
yes.
with you, man.
It just happened. It just happened.
Time to get it back. So another concept that I've been wrestling with for years, and this one here, I think first time that it finally clicked in me. And this is an amazing exercise for everybody. Okay, whatever it is that you have a scarcity of, it could be scarcity of money, it could be scarcity of time, it could be scarcity of relationships. Hey, I don't want to share this person with somebody because I think if I do, then something's going to happen. It could be scarcity of anything, right? Is the second that we release control over of that thing on them, is the second that we step into abundance of that thing. And I'll give you an example. In the early days when I was trying to make an income work, right? I didn't have any money. I had negative money. I had $16,000 in credit card debt and no money in the bank. And I remember I was holding on to this money so tight, going back to the original story, right? Holding on to this money so tight. And I didn't have it. And we literally couldn't go to eat at a restaurant most of the time. If we did, man, we saved up for that $6 bottle of wine at Fred Meyer. Like that was fancy wine. Or a steak. We would go and get the London broil, the worst cut of steak. But man, we could eat on that for like a week. And it was the toughest steak in the world. But man, that was splurging for us. It was a lot of getting fancy with ramen noodles and chopping up lunch meat in the ramen noodles with some scallions. Like, man, fancy meal. And so I don't remember the specific situation, but someone had needed some help and they needed some monetary help. And I'm just sitting there going, I don't have any, I can't help you. I don't have any money either. Like, you should be helping me is kind of what I'm thinking. But then something came over me and I decided, you know what? I don't have any money. This is like the last little bit I've got in here. Maybe I've got a few $100 in the bank from a gig that I just did. And I gave the person $100, like a third of what I had. And at first it was nerve wracking, right? I'm going, this is all that I've had. I need to go make more money so I can even hit the rent in 3 weeks or whatever it was. And I remember in that moment, I had given up on, I had given over the power that money had on me at that point. I said, if I give this person money that I think is scarce to me, now no longer is that money holding power over me when I don't have it. I'm freely deciding to not have it, freely deciding not. And I kept doing that over the years. Challenge myself on giving charity and other things like that, where I would go, okay, I'm going to write a much bigger check than I'm even comfortable writing right here. Like initially, you're going to look at this number here, like whatever that number is, and you go, okay, that feels good, and I feel like I'm doing good for the world, and I'm making a good donation. But then I go, got more I can give, and how much can I give to where it really hurts? Like it hurts. It's not an easy check, right? It's not an easy $50,000 check. I got all kinds of great things for 50 grand. And I would write those checks when I didn't want to. In that moment, my heart wasn't in it sometimes, and it was because money still had a hold over me. It still had some power. And
It
guys, I wanna
wasn't simply that you were accumulating, acquiring. It wasn't so that I can continue to give more.
yeah, it wasn't that. It was accumulation mode, and the money still had a hold on me, right? And so as long as something has a hold on you, you're gonna treat it scarcely. If something doesn't have a hold on you and you just discover it can free flow, it can come in and come out of your life, now it's abundance mindset. And so that's more of where I live my life. Now, I wouldn't say I'm 100% there all the time, but I'm more there. And I can tell you, when you give up the power that thing has on you by giving it to somebody freely, it's amazing. So if any of you guys have that scarcity mindset and you're sitting here telling me, Trevor, but I've got no money, literally take that and go give however much money that you have to somebody else, or a big chunk, but enough to where it hurts. You go, should I even do this? And release the power it has in you to completely eliminate the thought of even it coming back to you, right? Eliminate that at all. Just say, I'm doing this so that it doesn't have power over me anymore. I'm showing that I believe that the world is abundant and this thing didn't.
Yeah, there's something interesting in the brain and the heart there when you give what you don't have. Because if you're just acquiring for yourself, like time or money, it's never gonna feel like enough. Even though it is enough, it's never gonna feel like it. It's just always more and more and more. But the second I feel like the second you give what you don't have or what's uncomfortable, it just tells your brain like, I'm good. Like I'm good. It's this really weird feeling, like a plunge or a leap of faith. And it's yeah, I agree. It's extremely freeing.
Dude, I was
Um,
one last thought on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to this podcast. It was a really, really cool podcast with Noah Kagan, and he was interviewing.
The musician Noah Kagan?
No,
Oh,
this
I'm
is
thinking Noah different
yeah,
guy.
no, this
Sure.
guy, okdork.com. Uh, he owns AppSumo, about 80 million dollar company. And Noah just goes and interviews a lot of really successful people. He finds his way into really interesting situations. And he was interviewing this guy that he found at the racetrack. And this guy had these big, fancy, $300,000 supercars that they're racing and stuff. And he just goes up, talks to him, then he ends up getting him on a full interview later. And this guy came from just insanely poor background from Central or South America, came up, got educated, not like Ivy League or anything, stepped in, took some big risks, and he ended up making a lot of money in oil and gas trading. I'm talking like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And so this guy, he came from a background with nothing. He said, I'm going to go out here and make it so my family never has to think about money ever again because we never had any of it growing up. He makes more money than he can possibly spend. And a lot of people are then going to hoard their possessions, or they're going to take a car that's like $1 million car. He's going to take that car and no one can touch it. No one can drive it. And he goes, one thing I did years ago is he has a bunch of cars, like 15, 16 cars, like $25 million in cars or something crazy. And he goes, I do this with everything. He goes, my buddies will come in and back in the day, one of them said, man, that car must be amazing to drive. And he tosses him the keys and he goes, go drive it. And the guy goes, you're going to let me drive this $500,000 car? He goes, yeah, it's just a car. Like if you bump it or scrape it, I'll go get it fixed, right? What's important for me is creating an amazing experience for you. It's not this car. And so he said that's something he's always done over the years. If someone wants to drive one of his cars, he tosses him the key and he's not worried about the scratch or the bump. It's not about the object, it's about the experience. And that's such a cool mindset. Like when we're talking about abundance and we're talking about acquiring cash or acquiring things, the building over there, it's not about the object, it's about the experience. I want the experience of going through and revitalizing an old building to make it live a life again. I want the experience of working with local business owners who don't know how to run businesses, and we can help them by kind of educating them a little bit more and helping them along lower the noise. I want that experience being part of helping downtown. So flip that mindset too, guys, especially as you pass that need-based thing. You shift forward and say, it's not about the objects, it's about the experience. And how can I make the experience amazing for others?
Yeah. I love that, man. Thanks for sharing that. I want to share one more thing on this, and then I got a question for you to kind of put a bow on it. But um, going back to the ramp thing, it's funny, just for some context into that day. I think it might have been the day there was that sermon on giving, and that sermon, two things kind of went off in my brain. Was one, just that reminder of like how it's so freeing and how we should be giving what we don't have, like giving until it hurts or it's uncomfortable. That was one of the things. But the other light bulb was just thinking about time.
Yeah.
Because we're always like, even in this conversation, we're so geared towards thinking about like money and resources, and we forget that like time is, equally, if not like more, well, I would say, yeah, way more important. But we don't often think as much about giving our time. And so I felt really convicted of that, and it's funny because I'm sitting in church, and this is the worst habit. I have this terrible habit of like Sunday comes around, I wake up, I'm like, sweet, it's Sunday, I got free time, and then I think about all the ways to fill it. I don't know if people can relate to this, and I'm like,
100% me, dude. Like, this is where I'm not good. This
it's
is where I want to get
terrible.
better.
It should be a day of rest. Like there's a reason we need rest. Our bodies, our souls need rest. And I'm like, I got my notes in church, and I'm like in the bottom right corner, a little to-do list. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Anyway, so I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I could do X, I could do Y, I could do Z. And then I'm thinking, what about my family? What's Sloan going to say? She's been walking around for this. I got to balance that. Really, it should be the whole day is just rest and family. Anyways, I'm thinking this through like the things I selfishly want to do on this day. And then Dave, pastor's talking about giving what you don't have, what you do have. And so he started talking about time and serving. And I thought, like, oh man, I think I'm doing that. I think I'm holding on to my time too tightly. Same way we're talking about hold on to your money. And so I just finished uh, planning out what I was gonna do with my day. I heard that, and then that's when I texted you. I was like, "Hey, need anything?" "I'm convicted. I gotta find ways to spend my time outside myself." And so it was good. It was really freeing, and, the weight of that to-do list and those extra things you thought were super important just kinda, like, fades into the background a little bit. It's really interesting. So I don't know, anyone listening, I would just encourage you to think about, like, talking about abundance versus scarcity, it's like time is huge, and you spend time on other people and other things that matter, and somehow that time just comes back to you tenfold. I think it was that week or maybe the week after, we ended up having super great family time, took a day off, and went up to Portland to see Lecrae with Sloan and Adam, and it was great. And sometimes you almost don't even connect the dots and put 2 and 2 together. It's like, give up your time, you get it, so that you can pour it back out. So one last question I wanna wrap it up with, as you're talking about you wanna make time more of a priority and you wanna get better at reinvesting that time in the right spots. What's the next 5 years look like for you? Or what are you looking forward to over the next few years, hoping to? For the people that know and follow Trevor personally and closely, like, what are you going after?
How can I spend a bunch of time with my dad, um, and just really dig in with him? I think every minute that I'm able to spend with him right now is just going to pay a lot of dividends over long term. So outside of the nucleus, but the next thing there at work with Angie stepping in, I want to be a better and more intentional mentor and use my time internally with our team more. Because I tend to take on too many commits, and then those commits lead to me going over here and doing this work. And especially in a remote environment, even though our office is literally next door to each other, there might be days when we're in the office together and don't see each other. So I'm doing this and you're doing that. And so that's something I really get energy from. I just haven't set things up to do that well lately. So I'm pumped about finding opportunities to mentor better there. And then also mentoring outside of Carrot more. So we have the Epic program, which is good. I mean, we do get paid for that, but it's definitely not the pay that is probably equivalent of the time invested. And I'm pumped to spend more time there. I just want to find more time to mentor people in fun ways. So I'm going to be putting effort into building my personal content more, probably writing some blog posts, doing some more videos, so we can expand the impact that we have there. But yeah, this next year, it's honestly going to be a hyper focus on family, creating amazing experiences with my kids and Carly and my dad and mom, and then mentoring the people in this building and at the company a lot better, and picking and choosing some of our clients to mentor more closely.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I think something we didn't talk about in this podcast, but all that stems from like having a clear vision. Like a lot of this conversation, it doesn't mean hardly anything if you don't know where you're going. So I don't know, at least a couple of key takeaways for me. It's like have that, whatever you call it, freedom number, or have a clear vision and know what you want and know why you want it. That could even just that one piece could keep you busy for a while. Trying to come up with that. And then have a good, healthy perspective on scarcity versus abundance mindset. I think I looked at that, I would really just roll my eyes at it before and be like, oh, abundance mindset's so wooey. But really understand that and try to, get creative. And lastly, I think the one thing when it comes to scarcity versus abundance, where scarcity is healthy is with that time. Like time is scarce. Mortality motivation is a real thing, and recognize that, we don't know how long we have. So yeah.
Awesome, buddy. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, we need to schedule these ones more often, like do a monthly or something like that.
Braden loves it. Braden loves tearing apart the whole studio and set up in another room.
To bring it into here.
Yeah, it's good
I
stuff.
love it.
Thank you, man. It's been a fun conversation.
Likewise.
Anybody listening, watching, if you like this, share it with a friend, text to someone, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, do all of the things, but we appreciate it. And share this with someone that is struggling with a pessimistic or scarcity mindset like myself. And share that with them and try to be an encourager to someone today. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.